The Ghost of the Marigold. The Marigold had once been a grand ship, known throughout the seas for her speed and resilience. She'd traveled from the icy waters of the north to the tropical warmth of the south, carrying treasures and tales wherever she went. But after a terrible storm that sank the ship decades ago, she'd become a legend. Sailors whispered of seeing her ghostly figure drifting across the water, bathed in eerie light, her masts still tall against the horizon. Captain Eli McCallum didn't believe in ghost stories. An experienced sailor himself, he scoffed at the idea of a haunted ship. But he was also curious, and when he heard rumors that the Marigold had been spotted near the Black Rock Islands, he couldn't resist the call. He gathered his crew and set sail aboard his ship, the Stormcaller, determined to uncover the truth. After days of navigating unpredictable waters and dodging treacherous rocks, Eli's ship approached the Black Rock Islands. The sky had turned an ominous shade of gray, and the crew felt an unsettling chill despite the warm season. Eli squinted into the fog that clung to the water, searching for any sign of the Marigold. It was just before midnight when one of the crew shouted, pointing into the mist. Eli turned and saw it, a faint outline of a ship, her sails torn yet still somehow full, gliding silently over the water. The crew murmured in awe, some crossing themselves, others gripping the railing with white-knuckled hands. There was no doubt about it. The Marigold had returned. As the Stormcaller drew closer, Eli noticed strange details about the ghost ship. It seemed to glow faintly, as if illuminated from within, and he could make out shadowy figures moving across the deck. Gathering his courage, he ordered his men to anchor the ship and lower a small rowboat. With a few brave crew members, he rowed toward the Marigold, his heart pounding. When they reached the ghost ship, Eli clambered aboard, the boards creaking under his weight. The air was cold, and the shadows flickered strangely in the dim light. As he moved further onto the deck, he saw figures, translucent sailors, going about their duties in silence, their faces pale and expressionless. They didn't seem to notice him or his men, simply continuing their tasks as though they were still alive. Eli called out, but the ghostly crew ignored him. He made his way to the captain's cabin, where he found a figure seated at the table, studying a map. The man looked up, and Eli's breath caught. It was the Marigold's old captain, Samuel Kent, whose face was weathered and solemn, his eyes distant. "Why have you come here?" Kent's voice was like a whisper on the wind, barely audible. "I wanted to see the Marigold," Eli replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "To know if the stories were true." Kent's expression softened, and he gestured to the map on the table. "We're bound to the sea, Captain. This ship, this crew, we lost our way in that storm, and we've been adrift ever since." Eli felt a pang of sorrow for the ghostly captain and his crew, trapped in an endless journey, bound by the sea and their own unfinished purpose. "Is there a way to free you?" he asked. Kent looked at him, a faint hope flickering in his spectral eyes. "Perhaps. Return to where we were last seen by the living, near the Cape of Souls. If our spirits can touch the land once more, we might finally rest." Eli promised to help, and he and his crew returned to the Stormcaller. Following Kent's instructions, they sailed to the Cape of Souls, a rocky shore notorious for its dangerous currents. The Marigold followed them, and as they approached the cape, the ghost ship seemed to shimmer, her image fading in and out. When they finally reached the cape, a gust of wind swept over the Marigold, and the ghostly figures on her deck began to dissolve, their faces peaceful at last. Captain Kent raised a hand in thanks as his form faded into the mist. And then, just like that, the Marigold vanished, leaving only calm seas in her wake. The Stormcaller's crew returned home, forever changed by the encounter. And though Captain Eli continued to sail, he never again doubted the mysteries of the sea, or the souls that still wandered its depths. The Stolen Compass. The Tempest Queen was the pride of Captain Alaric Storm's fleet. Sleek, fast, and armed to the teeth, she was the most feared pirate ship in the northern seas. Captain Alaric was as cunning as he was ruthless, and he had amassed a legendary treasure hoard over the years. But there was one item he prized above all: a magical compass that could point to anything he desired. Legend had it that the compass was forged by a sorcerer, and it had been passed down through generations of pirates. Alaric used it to locate hidden islands, shipwrecks, and treasure troves others could only dream of. But one fateful night, the compass was stolen. Alaric was furious when he discovered the theft. The ghost of the Marigold questioned his crew, but none of them knew anything about it. The Marigold had once been a grand ship, determined to recover known throughout his prized the seas possession. For her speed and resilience. He set out on a quest to find the thief. She'd traveled from the icy waters led of the north to the tropical warmth of the south, the notorious treasures and tales wherever she went, had stolen the compass. But after a terrible storm that sank the ship decades ago, and he knew she was as skilled and ruthless as he was. Sailors whispered of seeing her ghostly figure drifting across the water, towards Skull Isle, bathed in eerie light, cove rumored her masts still tall against the horizon. Alaric knew it would be dangerous, but he was willing to face any risk to retrieve the ghost stories. As they approached the island, sailor himself, the crew spotted at the idea of a haunted Black Hydra, but he was also curious. And when Alaric he heard rumors that the Marigold had been spotted near the Black Rock Islands, he couldn't resist the pirate crews clashed in a fierce skirmish. He gathered his crew and set sail aboard his ship, the Stormcaller, determined to uncover the truth. Alaric fought his way to After days of navigating unpredictable waters and dodging treacherous rocks, he found her on the Eli's ship, brandishing a sword with a wicked grin. The sky had turned an ominous shade of gray, she taunted, and the crew felt an unsettling chill despite the warm season. Alaric narrowed his eyes. Eli squinted into the fog that clung to the water. Possession is searching for any sign of the Marigold, she replied, slipping the compass into her coat pocket. It was just before midnight. Besides, when one of the crew shouted, I needed it more than pointing you do. Into the mist. They dueled across the deck. Eli turned and saw their movements swift and precise. A faint outline of a ship, one a seasoned her sails fighter. Torn yet but as still the fight somehow full. Alaric realized that silently over wasn't the water. Just fighting to keep the crew compass. Murmured in awe. She was protecting some crossing crew, themselves, her home, others and her gripping freedom. The railing with white-knuckled hands. He hesitated. There was no doubt about his own motives. The Marigold in a moment of clarity, Alaric lowered his sword. As the Stormcaller drew closer, he said, Eli noticed strange details about the ghost ship. I don't need the compass to know where I'm going. As if illuminated from within, her eyes searching out shadowy figures moving across the deck. Slowly, gathering his courage, he ordered his men to anchor the ship and lower a small rowboat. A wise choice, with a few brave crew members. With an unspoken truce, they parted ways, his heart pounding. Alaric returned to the Tempest Queen. When they reached the ghost ship, feeling lighter than he had in years. For once he realized he was content to let the sea guide him, and the shadows though he had lost the magical compass, he had gained something far more valuable. He saw figures, a sense of purpose beyond treasure and glory, going about their duties in silence. The lost ship of Lyra Bay, expressionless. The town of Lyra Bay was known for its fishing industry, but it held a secret that few dared speak of. The legend of the Euryale, a ship that had disappeared over a century ago. He made his way to the captain's cabin. The Euryale had been a grand merchant vessel, carrying valuable goods from distant lands. The man looked up, but she had never returned from her last voyage. It was the Marigold she'd sunk in a storm. Samuel Kent, others whispered that she'd been weathered and solemn, but one thing was certain: distant. She had vanished without a trace. Why have you come here? Kent's voice was like a young fisherman named Kai, barely out into the bay. I wanted to see the Marigold, of the Euryale replied, and he had always dreamed of finding her. To know if the stories were true, the story as a myth, Kent's expression Kai believed she was still and he gestured to the map waiting on the table. To be discovered. We're bound to the sea, as Captain. Kai rowed his small boat further from shore, crew, the fog we lost our way in that and storm, he lost sight of the land. We've been adrift ever since. Just as he was about to turn back, Eli felt a pang of sorrow a shadowy for the ghostly captain and his crew, trapped in an endless journey, larger than any bound by the sea and their own unfinished His heart raced as he realized what he was looking at. Is there a way to free you? The Euryale. The ship was intact, but eerily silent, her sails hanging limp and her deck empty. Perhaps. Kai felt a chill as he climbed aboard, sensing that he had crossed into another world. The air was thick with an otherworldly presence, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Eli promised to help. Exploring the ship, he found strange artifacts. Following Kent's instructions, they sailed to the Cape of Souls, a collection of rocky shore notorious for its dangerous currents, filled with gold coins. The Marigold followed them, but as he moved further below deck, the cape, the ghost ship seemed to shimmer, her image fading in and out. When they finally reached the cape, followed the sound a gust of wind swept over the Marigold, and the ghostly figures on her deck began to dissolve, their faces peaceful at last. According to the log, Captain Kent had raised a hand in thanks as his form faded into the mist. They had vanished. And then, Just like
The
that,
captain's final
the
entry
Marigold
described
vanished,
a strange
leaving
fog
only calm
and a
seas
voice
in her
that
wake.
called to him from the
The
depths of the
Stormcaller's
sea.
crew returned home,
Kai
forever
shivered,
changed by the
realizing
encounter.
that the Uriel's crew
And though
had
Captain
never
Eli
escaped,
continued to sail,
they had been
he
claimed
never
by
again
something
doubted the
beyond
mysteries
mortal
of the sea,
understanding.
or the souls that
Just
still
then,
wandered
the
its
whispering
depths.
grew louder, and Kai felt a presence
The
behind him.
stolen compass.
He turned,
The
seeing
Tempest
faint
Queen
ghostly
was the
figures
pride
standing
of
in the
Captain
doorway.
Alaric Storm's fleet.
They looked at him with hollow
Sleek,
eyes,
fast,
their
and
faces
armed
etched
to the
with
teeth.
despair.
She was the most feared
Heart-pounding,
pirate ship in the
Kai
northern
stumbled
seas.
backward,
Captain
fleeing the
Alaric
ship
was as
fast
cunning as he was
could.
ruthless,
As he
and
rowed
he had
back
amassed
to
a
shore,
legendary
the
treasure
Uriel
hoard
faded
over the
into
years.
the mist, leaving
But
Kai
there was
alone
one
in
item
the
he
silence
prized
of the
above
bay.
all:
Though
a
he
magical
returned
compass
safely,
that could
he
point
would
to
never
anything he
forget the
desired.
haunted ship and the lost
Legend
souls
had it
trapped
that the
within
compass
her.
was forged
And
by
as
a
the years
sorcerer,
passed, he never
and it had
spoke
been
of his
passed down
encounter.
through generations of
But he knew the
pirates.
Uriel was still out there,
Alaric used it
drifting
to
through the
locate
fog,
hidden islands,
a ghostly
shipwrecks,
reminder
and
of the
treasure
sea's
troves others could
darkest.
only dream of. Alaric was furious when
But
he
one
discovered the
fateful
theft.
night, the compass was
He
stolen.
questioned his crew, but none of them knew anything about it. Determined to recover his prized possession, he set out on a quest to find the thief. Rumors led him to believe that a rival pirate, the notorious Captain Seraphine Drake, had stolen the compass. Alaric had crossed paths with Seraphine before, and he knew she was as skilled and ruthless as he was. The Tempest Queen set sail towards Skull Isle, a hidden cove rumored to be Seraphine's lair. Alaric knew it would be dangerous, but he was willing to face any risk to retrieve the compass. As they approached the island, the crew spotted Seraphine's ship, the Black Hydra, anchored in a secluded bay. Alaric ordered his men to prepare for battle, and they launched a surprise attack. The two pirate crews clashed in a fierce skirmish, swords flashing and cannons roaring. Amid the chaos, Alaric fought his way to Seraphine, determined to confront her face to face. He found her on the deck, brandishing a sword with a wicked grin. "Looking for something, Captain Storm?" she taunted, holding up the compass with a smirk. Alaric narrowed his eyes. "That belongs to me." "Possession is 9/10 of the law," she replied, slipping the compass into her coat pocket. "Besides, I needed it more than you do." They dueled across the deck, their movements swift and precise, each one a seasoned fighter. But as the fight wore on, Alaric realized that Seraphine wasn't just fighting to keep the compass. She was protecting her crew, her home, and her freedom. For the first time, he hesitated, questioning his own motives. In a moment of clarity, Alaric lowered his sword. "Keep it," he said, surprising himself as much as her. "I don't need the compass to know where I'm going." Seraphine paused, her eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. Slowly, she lowered her sword, nodding with a newfound respect. "A wise choice, Captain." With an unspoken truce, they parted ways. Alaric returned to the Tempest Queen, feeling lighter than he had in years. For once he realized he was content to let the sea guide him, and though he had lost the magical compass, he had gained something far more valuable, a sense of purpose beyond treasure and glory. The lost ship of Lyra Bay. The town of Lyra Bay was known for its fishing industry, but it held a secret that few dared speak of: the legend of the Euryale, a ship that had disappeared over a century ago. The Euryale had been a grand merchant vessel, carrying valuable goods from distant lands, but she had never returned from her last voyage. Some believed she'd sunk in a storm, others whispered that she'd been cursed. But one thing was certain: she had vanished without a trace. On a misty morning, a young fisherman named Kai ventured out into the bay. He'd grown up hearing tales of the Uriel, and he had always dreamed of finding her. Though most dismissed the story as a myth, Kai believed she was still out there, waiting to be discovered. As Kai rowed his small boat further from shore, the fog thickened, and he lost sight of the land. Just as he was about to turn back, he saw a shadowy figure looming in the mist. A ship, larger than any he'd seen before. His heart raced as he realized what he was looking at: the Euryale. The ship was intact but eerily silent, her sails hanging limp and her deck empty. Kai felt a chill as he climbed aboard, sensing that he had crossed into another world. The air was thick with an otherworldly presence, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Exploring the ship, he found strange artifacts, maps marked with symbols he didn't recognize.
a collection of exotic shells, and a chest filled with gold coins. But as he moved further below deck, he heard a faint whispering, like voices carried on the wind. He followed the sound to a cabin at the end of a narrow hall, where he found a logbook, its pages filled with frantic, scrawled entries. According to the log, the crew had encountered a powerful storm, and one by one, they had vanished. The captain's final entry described a strange fog and a voice that called to him from the depths of the sea. Kai shivered, realizing that the Urieli's crew had never escaped. They had been claimed by something beyond mortal understanding. Just then, the whispering grew louder, and Kai felt a presence behind him. He turned, seeing faint ghostly figures standing in the doorway. They looked at him with hollow eyes, their faces etched with despair. Heart pounding, Kai stumbled backward, fleeing the ship as fast as he could. As he rowed back to shore, the Uriel faded into the mist, leaving Kai alone in the silence of the bay. Though he returned safely, he would never forget the haunted ship and the lost souls trapped within her, and as the years passed, he never spoke of his encounter, but he knew the Uriel was still out there, drifting through the fog, a ghostly reminder of the sea's darkest,